Hello everyone, I am back with another AQA Biology AS level video, and today we're going to be doing starch, glycogen, and cellulose, which is pretty much the last subunit of carbohydrates, and then we're going to move on into lipids. But I'm just going to pretty much detailed, go over everything you need to know about starch, glycogen, and cellulose. And this is part 3 of the AQA Biology little mini series. If you haven't checked out the first 2 videos, then please feel free to go ahead and do that. It will definitely help to prepare you for what is about to come in this video. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. So we're going to start off with starch. Now, starch is a polysaccharide, and we mentioned earlier that it is stored in small grains or granules. You could find it in chloroplasts, you could find it in seeds, storage organs such as potatoes, and we know potatoes are very starchy, and that is because they have a really high starch concentration or starch storage. Now, starch is formed from alpha glucose monomers, and these alpha glucose monomers are bonded via glycosidic bonds, and they form essentially maltose, which is a disaccharide, and then the maltose kind of form glycosidic bonds with each other, in turn forming your polysaccharide known as starch. Now, starch is a really important energy source. So they pretty much mention chains of alpha glucose monosaccharides, condensation reaction, and it's really important. You need to know that it's unbranched, and it's wounded into a tight coil that makes the molecule very compact. Now, you might be wondering, what does it being compact have to do with, the whole fact that it's used as a storage molecule? Essentially, the fact that it's compact means that you can store a lot of starch in a very small quantity, which is incredible because we don't want to take up that much space, of course, and we want as much starch as possible to be stored. And so the fact that it's so compact makes it really, really useful for plants because they can store so much starch in such a small volume, I suppose. And that means that there's maximum alpha glucose, so that means that there's maximum energy store for respiration. So yeah, pretty much over here we have our learning objectives on the right. So this is our starch, and it's unbranched, as you can see. Now, you might be wondering what branches look like. We're going to see that a little bit later. But it essentially kind of looks like a tree. This one's just it's not a straight chain. It's pretty much curved. But it doesn't have any branches. So it stains deep blue with iodine solution. You have alpha glucose arranged in a little helix shape. And those are your alpha glucose molecules. And we know the alpha glucose is a hexose sugar, so it has 6 carbon atoms, hence the name hex or the prefix hex. The OH groups are pointing inwards, and these form hydrogen bonds that hold the helix in place. Now, essentially, the hydrogen bonds are weak bonds, and they collectively, we learned about this at the very beginning in lesson 1, but they collectively form really, really strong bonds that are very crucial for whatever molecule you have. So once again, OH groups do point inwards, and they form hydrogen bonds, which are weak bonds that collectively form strong bonds that have a significant impact on the strength of the molecule. Alpha glucose molecules bind together, forming a helical pattern, I suppose you could say, helix pattern, and they are hexose sugars, meaning they have 6 carbon atoms. So once again, the hydrogen bonds are really crucial because they hold the helix in place. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that. So we have glycogen after this, but essentially this is our little micrograph of the starch. And you can kind of see it. It's in blue because the iodine test results in it kind of having a blue-black color. We're going to be learning about the adaptations, and this is a really, really important question, and it comes for multiple marks in your exams, and you do need to know this really well. So it's pretty easy. It's pretty logical. I feel like adaptations tend to be logical. Now, starch is a major energy storage molecule, and it is especially suited for energy storage because it's insoluble, so it doesn't affect the osmotic gradient or the water potential of the cell. So this means that, because we're referring to a cell in the plants, because starch is used as a storage molecule in plants, not in animals, this means that water isn't going to be drawn into the cells, and that means that the cell isn't going to swell up. It is large and insoluble, so it doesn't diffuse out of cells. This is pretty similar to the first point, I suppose. But as opposed to water moving in, we're kind of referring to the molecule itself moving out, or the substance itself moving out. And we're going to go over these once again. It is compact, so a lot of it can fit into a small space. When hydrolyzed forms alpha glucose, which can be transported really easily and used in respiration. The branched form has many ends, which can be acted on by enzymes, thus resulting in rapid breakdown into alpha glucose, meaning that it can easily be used in respiration. So we're going to be going over this once again. We have 5 main adaptations of our, what's it called? Of our starch, sorry. My brain kind of glitched there for a second. But we have 5 main adaptations. First two are really similar. So it is insoluble, so it doesn't affect the osmotic gradient of the cell, meaning the water isn't going to be drawn into the cell, and the cell won't swell up. The second adaptation is the fact that it won't diffuse out of cells because it is insoluble, and also it's large, and diffusion is a lot easier with smaller molecules. Thirdly, it's very compact. A lot of it can be stored in a small space. The fourth adaptation is the fact that it can be broken down or hydrolyzed specifically into alpha glucose molecules, which can be used in respiration really easily and transported. Thus, they can be used as a really fast energy source. Last but not least, the brand chain of starch has multiple branched ends on which enzymes can be acted simultaneously, resulting in a super fast breakdown and hydrolysis into alpha glucose, meaning it can swiftly and readily be used for respiration. Okay, next up we have glycogen and then cellulose, and then we're done. And this has been quite the journey. But we'll get through it, guys, I promise. Probably another, I want to say 15, maybe 20 minutes. But yeah, with that, we're going to be done with all of carbohydrates. So all of 1.4, which is such a relief, honestly. And then we're going to move on to lipids, for which I'm going to film a separate mini-series. But yeah, let's get into glycogen. Okay. Glycogen is found in animals and bacteria, and never in plant cells. I don't remember what fungi store, or what fungi have as an energy store. I'm gonna look it up really quick. I think they have glycogen, yeah. I don't know why they didn't mention that here, but fungi also has glycogen. So it's very similar to starch, but it has shorter chains and it's more highly branched. So it's kind of referred to as animal starch. It is also made of alpha glucose. And in animals, it's stored as small granules, usually in the muscles and the liver. The mass of carbohydrates is relatively small because fat is the main storage molecule in us animals. Its structure suits its storage because it is insoluble. Glycogen is insoluble. And so, once again, it doesn't affect the osmotic gradient. It doesn't diffuse out of cells. So the first, pretty much all of them are the same. So if you remember the ones for starch, you can remember them for glycogen and vice versa. So it's large and insoluble, so it doesn't diffuse out of cells. It's insoluble, so it doesn't affect the osmotic gradient, and water isn't drawn into cells. Now for animals, this is particularly important, even more than plant cells, because animals don't have a cell wall. So if water is drawn into the cells are essentially just going to burst. And that could ruin everything. And we really don't want that to happen. It is compact, so a lot of it can be stored in a small space. Highly branched, a lot more highly branched, which works specifically well for animals because animals tend to move a lot, and so they really do need the glycogen to be broken down into alpha glucose, really, really fast via hydrolysis. And so, because it's more branched, it can be worked on more fastly via enzymes, and can be broken down into the constituent monosaccharides, specifically the alpha glucose, a lot faster. And so as a result, animals have a lot higher metabolic rates. And as a result, respiratory rate, because we know respiration is just the conversion of glucose and oxygen into carbon dioxide and water. And last but not least, we have cellulose, which is a little bit longer. And then we're done. Come on, guys, we can power through it. Trust me, we got this. Cellulose differs from starch and glycogen in one major aspect. As I have already mentioned, it is made of beta-glucose monomers. And this pretty much small variation is so fundamental and crucial. We're going to be going over it now. Rather than forming a coiled chain like starch, cellulose has a straight unbranched chain. These chains run parallel to one another, allowing hydrogen bonds to form between adjacent chains. Now, this seems complicated. I will break it down, I promise you. While each individual hydrogen bond adds very little strength to the molecule, the sheer overall number of them makes a considerable contribution to strengthening cellulose, making it the valuable structure that it is. The arrangement of beta-glucose chains in a cellulose molecule is shown in the following figure. So the cellulose chain, unlike that of starch, has adjacent glucose molecules. Hydrogen bonds are formed between hydroxyl groups on adjacent parallel chains that help to give cellulose its structural ability. Take a second to just let that sink in, maybe. Essentially, if we're breaking it down, cellulose is made up of beta-glucose, and the beta-glucose are bind to each other by glycosidic bonds to form unbranched straight chains, as opposed to helix chains, I suppose it was called. So straight unbranched chains that run parallel to one another, and we have pretty weak hydrogen bonds between the OH groups on the adjacent between adjacent chains. However, collectively, these seemingly weak bonds form a strong collective strength overall, and as a result, this gives plants the strength that they so desperately need in order to keep themselves up. That's pretty much it. So we have a little bit more, guys. Come on, we can do this. I'm pretty much trying to get myself through this, but if I can do it, so can you. After this, we're done. No more biology for, I don't know, depends really what you're doing. But cellulose molecules are grouped together to form microfibrils, which are grouped together to form fibers. So I'm pretty sure I've written this down here. Cellulose to microfibrils to fibers, and you kind of expect fibers to be the biggest. So you pretty much have beta glucose, which bind to each other via glycosidic bonds to form cellulose, which is grouped together to form microfibrils, grouped together to form fibers. Cellulose is a major component of plant cell walls. It adds rigidity, prevents the cell from bursting as water enters by osmosis, and it does this by exerting an inward pressure to stop any further influx of water. This is known as turgor, or turgor pressure, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so in summary, once again, cellulose, microfibrils, fibers. Cellulose has 3 adaptations. It's made of beta glucose, which is long, unbranched, straight chains. I'm not really sure how that's an adaptation, but I suppose it is. It's a feature for sure, but I don't know how that's an adaptation. Cellulose molecular chains run parallel and have weak hydrogen bonds that collectively result in immense strength for the plant. Molecules are grouped together to form microfibrils, which in turn are grouped to form fibers, which provide even more strength. So microfibrils grouped together, fibers, which provides a lot of strength. Okay, guys, last little part, I suppose. We're going to be doing the summary questions, and then we're done for the day. Okay, the following list of carbohydrates, choose one or more that closely fit with all the statements below. Oh, it's multiple choice. Amazing. Stains deep blue with iodine, that's going to be starch. Is known as animal starch, is glycogen. Found in plants is, well, you could do multiple. You could do beta glucose, and you could also do cellulose. Our polysaccharides would be cellulose, starch, and glycogen. Monosaccharides found in starch would be alpha glucose. Has a structural function is cellulose. Can be hydrolyzed is that would be glycogen, starch, and cellulose. Hydrolyzed is basically a fancy word for broken down, but you do have to use the word hydrolyzed or else you're not going to get the marks. Easily moves in and out by facilitated diffusion. Ooh. I'm not sure what that would be. Easily moves in and out of cells? I'm assuming it would be one of the monomers. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any other recommendations for any subjects whatsoever, GCSE content, IGCSE content, studying tips, please feel free to let me know. And please like and subscribe. It really does help my channel grow. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and good luck with all of your academic endeavors.